Hello and welcome to another modelling video. This is Alan from the McConaughey at YouTube. And unfortunately, the start of 2022 had a bit of bad luck. A lot of people came down with COVID at work and I had to work for the first half of the month straight. The second half I was exposed as a close contact and I was stuck at home. At the same time, the government has decided to close my driveway and dig up the whole front yard and driveway, which inspired me to recreate via 3D printing Marvin Heemeyer's Killdozer, an incident in 1951 Colorado, United States, where his repair shop was denied access via property demolition from the rest of the community and was forced to build his own homemade tank within his premises to break out and devastate the community. Feeling isolated but nowhere near the same tragic and disturbing situation, I thought it'd be an interesting project to tackle for sure. Downloading the model from Thingiverse and scaling it using the scale model calculator. Utilizing the Anycubic DLP 3D printer Mono X model and Anycubic flesh resin, I produced, sliced, printed, painted and finished the whole model within the week required to be isolated until I returned to work. It was also a challenge to have the whole model finished before the cement was set and my driveway was finished where I'd be able to exit my property unmolested. To be honest, I was looking for some time off and it was all very convenient. After the model was printed, I placed the resin in a container and washed it with methylated spirits. First round with contaminated spirits and the second round with clear. Once it's settled and degassed, rinsed it with water and sat it in the sun for a short period of time to harden up and not be as sticky. The print at 60% exposure, a slow retraction speed and a lot of supports came out quite well. The model was well designed and it was a very small gram amount, making it a fairly affordable print. I ran off a few copies for friends who also would like to have one. Slicing and supporting your model is a bit of a challenge and trick, one of the biggest learning curves in getting into resin 3D printing. You have a look with the slicing software and where you have the surface touching the build plate. This will need supports to cure and stick. Raise the model at an angle and about 5 mm above the build plate and add all the supports that are really hanging low. It cannot print in mid-air and it would sandwich or not print at all and stick to the film, resulting in a failed print. This amount of supports is ideal, and being at its skinniest, it tears off very easily. I've also used the software to hollow it and put a 5 mm hole to drain any excess resin out to be reused. This was filled with 2-part epoxy putty and a little bit of the ridge was fixed with dissolved putty. The surface was sanded with 120 then 300 grit sandpaper to smooth it a bit more before primer was applied. I utilized automotive filler primer lacquer via Airbrush, thinned with a leveling lacquer thinner, also used for automotive application. Z-axis lines were filled and there was no imperfections and the print was practically perfect. I did not have to do any sanding or filling. The model will be mostly airbrushed with lacquer branded hobby paints in 3-4 shades in a light gradient fashion. Starting with the darkest colour and focusing on the concrete, it's easier to mask higher points than lower points. I shaded the entire undercarriage and the bottom of all the slats and detail panels with this very dark grey and allowed it to dry sufficiently. Over another 3 passes, the colours eventually gradually got lighter and lighter, and I post shaded by colouring in the panels in a neat line, low PSI and a 60 to 70% thinning ratio. The top is a solid lighter grey colour, and I finished off with the very top at the lightest grey where light would naturally cascade down. The reference went through Google search of what the tank looked like as it was rampaging and after it got captured, and it was done in a very hastily manner, so the concrete was fairly heavily stained and had a lot of building debris on it. After 24 hours and the grey paint has dried, I use hobby grade masking tape and covered the whole concrete armor section and painted the yellow for the bulldozer paint job. This part was also absolutely filthy, so there would need to be a few methods of weathering to get its authentic look. I started with a brown instead of a yellow and shaded it up to a construction vehicle yellow colour and highlighted the very tops with a school bus colour. Peeling all of the masking back, no paint chipped or peeled off to my relief. I am rushing this and trying to get it done in 3 days, so I was a bit worried that I would peel paint, and hand painted the tracks with a brownish metallic that I normally use for my other military vehicles. Might not have been the most appropriate as it's more of a rubber track than a military metal track, though it's all very filthy. Each of the panels and details was picked out with a sludge wash, heavily thinned down with a fine brush, and a coating of a rough matte clear to seal it and rough up the texture to be playful with weathering pigment. For MIG production pigment, I brushed on quite a bit of dirt and built it up in a few layers to really filthy up the dozer blade. The final matte coat and a short drying period was finished just before the fresh concrete was laid. My driveway was inaccessible for approximately 5 days. To be absolutely honest, it's not my best work. I didn't even really spend that much time on it. The model was in one piece and already pretty well designed. In the way of downloading it, scaling it, print, clean up and painting, I may not have invested any more than 4 hours. However, with its unique shape and fairly decent knowledge of its historical significance, it was a lot of fun and fascinating to revisit this in such an interesting time. Some of my casual viewers are probably not aware that the front of my property is my studio, and it's also a hobby shop, and on my time off I open the roller doors and have customers and friends come to visit me and buy things. Being in isolation, I'm only allowed to leave the property to get tested twice before returning to work, and I can't really have any visitors or see anybody outside. It was also a crazy coincidence that the driveway was being worked on, which would have also denied access to customers for a full week. This was more so for social media marketing and sharing the build, promoting the history of this incident, all in model and art form. As a hobbyist, this is almost LARPing. Sequence of events led to this and expressed via building and painting of a very unique model. As I did other cleaning, maintenance and administration, I took my time, very useful to set myself up for the rest of the year as a studio and artisan. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, until next time, stay tuned for further videos. I've also filmed this on the second last day of isolation and will upload it the very next week as a special. Catch you guys later.